Yesterday I spent most of the day removing with the steam wallpaper stripper miles and miles and miles of 2-inch wide masking tape that they used to tape down the plywood furrings that originally supported the floor. I've just cleaned the floor and even more paint's come off. I have no idea why this paint's coming off here. You can see now, you can see the rusty edges from the stuff when I first took the floor up, but that clean metal or cleanish metal is what came off today just from washing this floor down. So I've got some rusty spots. This is just surface rust. Wherever they've drilled holes, and this is a good example why I should always clean up swarf. Wherever they've drilled holes, you can see for example there, they let the swarf fly. That's rusted into the paint. There's some surface rust over there where water had been getting in through one of the bolt holes for the unwinds track. So I'm just waiting for this floor to dry now after washing it off, because it'd be much easier to clean the swarf up with a non-sticky floor. And then tomorrow I'm going to be out with the wire brush and the angle grinder, clean this up, maybe get this surface rust off, but I'm not overly bothered about it. Clean that up in the corner, deal with that. And I've got a little bit down at the end of the van. Whoops. You can see the trim I've taken off. I just want to clean up around the edge there, take that back, and then I'm going to see in the rust there. That's what was there. I think that's where one of the stays were for the doors. Basically anywhere they've drilled holes, I've got to make things good. They've also, you can see they've patched up the mounting points. There would have been those eyelets there and there and there, and they filled all the holes up with goo, which is a shame because I probably could have used those holes. But the floor's come up relatively clean, other than the millions, well, yeah, there's what, 200-ish holes to deal with. I won't be filling these other than with black PU40. We haven't 100% decided what we're going to do about mounting a seat yet, and I may well use some of the unwinds track. Did I say unistrack before? Can't remember. But I may well use some of the unwinds track to mount a seat on, and the rest I will fill in from the top with black PU40 glue as I come to mount the floor down, and then I'll deal with any issues underneath at a later date. But take my time with this van. I mean, realistically, in the current climate, I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to get any plywood delivered or insulation. So there really isn't any great rush to do anything. And I've been doing other jobs around the house as well. But I want to get some floor down. I can't really do very much in here until the floor's down. Those lines there are where the angle grinder was when they cut out. They basically cut through the plywood to mount the dirty grate plate that was mounted there for one of the seats. You can see they've nicked it in places. They've actually gone through in a couple of places, which I need to make good. But next job, once this floor is completely dry, which may well be tomorrow, will be to grind back the worst of the rusty bits and treat the rest, and then give this a coat of what have I got? I've got some Built Hamber mastic, white mastic, epoxy mastic. I think I'll use that. I don't think I've got enough Hammerite left over. Good morning everyone. So today I'm going to do battle with the angle grinder, or rather the angle grinder with a wire brush on it, and clean up some of the rusty surfaces on the floor behind me. Early on I showed just cleaning up the floor. There was lots of masking tape, bits and pieces, just mucky fruit juice, and all the muck that's accumulated on the floor of this van. So I've cleaned that all up, it's dry now. The wire brush will make quite a lot of swarf and dust, which I will need to clean up as best as I can. And it's a nice dry day today. It's not as hot as it was yesterday. Yesterday I was messing around with solar hot water panels, just an experiment to see if it would be practical to use one in the van. Not entirely convinced it's going to work. I think the panel needs to be too big, and I want to make something that's portable, because there's no point in having it on the roof of the van all the time. But I've made one, and I've had an experiment, and I may do a video on that separately at a later date if I get anywhere with it. But for today, it's dealing with this floor. And one of the most important things these things. For the last few years I've been, or had been, commuting to Chester every day on the motorbike, my 1200cc BMW, which I sold because I've hopefully finished with work now. And I always wear earplugs, and these are called pluggers. They're for swimming, but these have been fantastic for use in the car, on the motorbike, and I'm going to use them today because in a metal box like this, ye gods, you know, the noise from the angle grinder is quite excessive, especially in a resonance, you know, an echo chamber. So I think earplugs and eye protection, very essential. Anyway, I'm going to put the camera on time lapse and just do battle with this floor. I hope to get some rust treatment on the bare metal by the end of the day. Let's see how we get on. Unfortunately, my trusty ex-Wix angle grinder that I've had for probably 30 years died a death of me. And I bought a replacement from Screwfix, but the guards are too small for the wire brush, so this is going to be a bit scarier than it needs to be. I don't like using unguarded tools. The wire brush will do the vast majority of work, and then I've got a sanding flapper wheel there which I can get into the corners with, and that will fit in the guards. But what I do like about this new angle grinder is the switch is far better designed and accessible and made than the one that was on the old Wix one. That didn't latch well, it was awkward to get out to turn off. This is better, but I'm going to have to be very careful I don't remove some skin with this thing. Whew. I'm getting to an age where my back's going, and that's uncomfortable. I'm using the grinder in one direction only so that the air from the motor and the wire brush is pushing everything out towards the back of the van. I don't want it flying up, hitting the glass or into the cab area, because I can't shield, as I said earlier, and I can't shield this brush, and iron filings cause incredible damage over time. You'll notice that that area there was by far the most rusted. There was actually dust flying up there. There's a fair amount of surface rust there, and I shall go over that again in a minute with the flapper wheel. But that's the only area where there's actually any real rust. Every single hole hadn't been treated by the ambulance converters, so there is paint lifting as a result of distortion in the metal, the way it was drilled, and a little bit of rust creeping out underneath. So I'm going over every single hole. This area here I've been working on here is where the one of the seats was, and there are some score marks in the floor from where they cut through the plywood. But all in all, it's cleaned up perfectly okay. So that is the only that is the only area really that I need to concentrate on. This sort of stuff that's here in the corner, I might be able to get at it, but it is only swarf on top of the paint, and if I treat that hopefully that'll deal with it once it's actually sealed with a bit of paint, because I'm not going to get it all. I won't be able to get into there, it's too awkward. But the areas that I expected to need doing, you'll notice paint is coming away from pretty much every single one of these holes, and I've got several hundred of these in total to do. But it isn't taking very long, so it is fortunately cleaned up. You'll notice that the area below where I'm standing, the large areas where paint have lifted up, that seems to be the extent of it. The brush hasn't taken up hardly any other paint. I wonder if they spilt some chemicals or something on here. Don't know, it's a bit odd. There's like little, it looks like there's droplets. But I now work my way down to the back of the van, and the last part is the area where the sill goes round. Again, I think it's where swarf has just worked its way to the back of the van and accumulated. Hopefully it's just on top of the paint, but we will see. Anyway, let's press on. Well, I'm very pleased with that. Those earplugs make a hell of a difference. I've just done a couple of remaining holes I missed without putting them in. My goodness. Surprising difference. Well recommended. So there you go. That didn't take anything like as long as I thought it would. And fortunately, right at the back there where the sill goes, you can see I've taken off there. That was just swarf in the paint. There's no rust there at all. I thought it was going to be probably an interesting area. There's some rusty spots over there where, what was across there? Oh, that's where the ramp was originally bolted through. The actual floor's distorted. They did the bolts up so tight. They were reinforcing plates top and bottom, but they've actually just, you know, the floor's a bit distorted there. There's a very big hole just there. That's where the grommet for the battery cable, or the power cable rather, to the hydraulics for the ramp originally went, and I'm going to probably end up using that. That may be a handy hole. The batteries could end up on that side of the van. Haven't decided yet. Still working this out in the back of my mind. I think it goes without saying, this is obviously not a job you want to be doing on a wet day or a damp day. I've made a hell of a lot of mess in there. A lot of that is going to be metal filings, and I need to be able to hoover that up. If there was any condensation in this van at all, that would be near impossible to do. It's April the, what is it today? April the 10th or the 9th? I've lost track. It's gorgeous. I had been putting this off and putting this off and putting this off, and I'm glad I did, because it's just the right sort of nice pleasant temperature to deal with all this. There's the edge there. I've just cleaned up with the brush, and I haven't dealt with the stuff you can see orange rust staining at the edges there. That's actually mastic, so it is just swarf that's gone rusty in the mastic. I'll do more damage than good trying to clean that up, but all the areas that matter, all the hundreds of holes, I've managed to actually clean up. At least that's good enough to that's good enough for me. It'll never be perfect, but it ain't gonna. I'm not gonna make it worse, am I? So that's the floor treated with Curust. Just as a sort of an in case, really. The only area that really needed it was probably that area there, which is a little bit pitted. Everything else I got there, I got the metal nice and clean. But I might as well use this stuff anyway since I got it. The primer I'm going to use is a Built and Hammer product over there in the step. I don't know whether this is an unusual type of zinc primer, but they don't advise top coating for 96 hours. That's 4 days. So once I've squirted this afternoon, that'll be it for the best side of a week. and then I'll be painting the floor with this stuff. The stuff on the left is the Electrox zinc rich primer from Built Hamber, and that is a 2-part epoxy mastic in white. It's a little bit superior in many ways to Hammerite. I bought this 18 months ago when I realised how much rust there was in the steps of these vehicles, and I've since then had a professional company in just to do the steps. I had this van done at the same time as I had the Sprinter done. So now I've got a whole can of this stuff that I can just use on the floor, and I intend to do the whole floor if there's enough, but certainly make a good job of all these black splodges. And this will also go into the holes, which I've cleaned out individually with a step drill previously, just to remove any, well, a little bit of surface rust or whatever, and then I will be sealing them all up at a later date. But I want to get some paint actually in the holes as well as on all these areas that I've exposed. I'm very pleased that area at the top there, he says coughing, I'm very pleased the area at the top there, although that paint's lifted off it, you know, I went over it extensively with a wire brush to try and verify there wasn't any more flaking. It's just those 2 places. I wonder what was there or what caused that. It's quite an unusual effect. But there you go. Undercoated later on today, and then a 4-day wait before I can complete this video. Crikey. Might have this van finished in a few years, I suppose. Who knows? Well, that's the primer down. I had to stop the time lapse and shut the doors because a bit too much overspray heading towards the cab area, which I didn't want to do. Just happens the wind sort of blowing from behind me at the moment. So there we go. That's a 1.5 cans of undercoat, primer rather, zinc primer, over all the rusty spots. And I had a little bit spare just to do where I've cut away some of the metal from over there in that far right hand corner, because there was a bit of bare metal there. But that I do. Now I've got to leave that for 96 hours according to the instructions on the can, and then I can play with the epoxy mastic. So 4 days later, the primer's gone off, and I'm about to give it a coat of this epoxy mastic, Built Hamber 2-part epoxy mastic. I've mixed up 1/2 litre from the can to starters, and that gives you another 1/2 litre left over. But let's give this a go. Shouldn't take long. Well, I gave up with the time lapse because I realised there probably wasn't actually much to record, but there you go. That's an entire litre of paint used up. It actually comes out with a matte finish. I wasn't sure whether it would be matte or gloss. I could done with doing a second coat, but at the best side of 30 quid a litre, I don't think I'll bother. That's enough to do what I wanted to do, which was to seal the floor, get rid of all the rust. I've gone over it in a couple of places where the rust was, especially in that corner over there. But the rest of that's just over the top of the pure paint. That gives me a good surface now to put the floor down, if and when I can buy some plywood and some insulation. But that'll do for today's exercise. And now to leave it to bake for, I don't know, well, by the time it's by the time I've got some materials to finish the floor, that will have gone off very nicely. But a litre of the stuff doesn't go as far as I thought. It's supposed to do 10 metres square. This is 8-ish metres square, and I was struggling. I'm glad I did that end first, the bit that mattered around the door frame. But I was struggling in the centre there, just to get a nice coating over the existing paint, so not essential. But all the bits I wanted to cover are now covered. And I've even managed to use a little bit of extra, wide spare, just push that under the seats. I haven't bothered over there, in that area there, because that's, although there's rusty spots there, that's actually mastic stuff, you know, soundproofing, so there's no metal work going rusty there. Right. Pause until I can lay the floor proper.